Tonight, a second wave of deadly explosions rocks Lebanon, this time targeting walkie-talkies. We're inside the country as tensions between the terrorist group Hezbollah and Israel are mounting.
Hospitals like this one are now at breaking point.
Major news for the economy, the Fed cutting interest rates for the first time in 4 years. What it means for your wallet.
It's a huge problem, and it's getting worse and worse.
And tonight's Eye on America, mortgage rates are coming down, but what about the supply shortage of homes? We look at one solution.
I'm the first person in my family to be a homeowner.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us on this Wednesday night. There's a lot of news at home and around the world, and we want to start with the number one issue for Americans, the economy. The Federal Reserve made a big move today, cutting rates by 0.5 percentage point. That's more than expected, and it is the first rate cut since the COVID pandemic in 2020 and the largest since the 2008 financial crisis. So tonight, the big question is, what does it mean for your credit card bills, your mortgage, your auto loans, and your pocketbook? And how soon could you feel the effects of the rate cut? CBS's senior business and tech correspondent Jolene Kent leads us off tonight with some of those answers.
After months of anticipation, the Federal Reserve today aggressively reduced the cost of borrowing for the first time in 4 years with a 0.5-point rate cut.
Our patient approach over the past year has paid dividends.
The central bank sending rates down from their more than 20-year high.
What message are you trying to send American consumers, the American people, with this unusually large rate cut?
I would just say that, the U.S. economy is in a good place, and our decision today is designed to keep it there.
Inflation has cooled off from its peak of more than 9% in 2022 to 2.5% last month, as the jobs market shows signs of weakening.
Is the Federal Reserve effectively declaring a decisive victory over inflation and rising prices?
No, we're not. We're not saying mission accomplished or anything like that. But I have to say, though, we're encouraged by the progress that we have made.
The effects of this rate cut will take time to trickle down to consumers. For credit card debt, a 0.5-point reduction will mean $2 off monthly interest payments on a $5,000 balance. Payments on a new 5-year $35,000 car loan will drop by $8 a month. And monthly payments on a $50,000 home equity line would go down by $21.
I may need a new vehicle, but those are definitely considerations that you have to take in mind during these tough times.
This jumbo rate cut is welcome news for Gladys Ospina in California, who wants to update her car and help her brother buy his first home as soon as possible.
It gives us options in the case of my brother to be able to help him and see him in a better position where he's able to buy his first home.
And Jolene joins us now. So a 0.5 point was more than expected, but what happens the rest of the year?
Yeah, great question. The Fed is forecasting that there's going to be 2 more rate cuts in November and December, totaling another 0.5 point, with more cuts coming next year. But Chair Powell emphasized to us that they are deciding this meeting by meeting. The data really matters here, Nora.
All right, what a day. Jolene Kent, thank you very much. Thanks. Now to the Middle East and another highly unusual attack inside Lebanon. In a second wave of attacks targeting the terror group Hezbollah, exploding walkie-talkies and handheld radios killed at least 20 people and wounded hundreds more. Now this a day after exploding pagers killed at least a dozen and wounded thousands. CBS's Imtiaz Tayeb has the latest developments from Lebanon's capital, Beirut. Good evening, Imtiaz.
Nora, good evening to you. Well, as you can imagine, Lebanon is really on edge tonight after a second day of synchronized explosions of communication devices turned bombs, with many people telling us while Hezbollah may be the target, they no longer trust their own phones and fear they could be next.
In Beirut, even funerals are no longer safe after a second wave of mass explosions, including at a burial procession for 4 people killed in Tuesday's pagers-turned bomb attacks. Eyewitnesses say this time, walkie-talkies carried by Hezbollah members exploded right before their eyes. The explosions were once again simultaneous and went off in cities and towns across Lebanon. Hezbollah accuses Israel of turning thousands of its communications devices into deadly weapons. with Lebanese security officials saying tonight it was ICOM ICV-82 transceiver radios, or walkie-talkies, that detonated, killing at least 20 and wounding over 450. Although smaller in scale than Tuesday's mass explosions involving pagers, that killed 12 people and left over 2,700 with injuries so serious, emergency doctor Dania Al-Halak, who treated around 200 patients, says she's never seen anything like it before.
We started seeing people all blown up, eyeballs ruptured, abdomen open, bones out, thighs open. It was very terrible.
A humiliated Hezbollah has vowed to take revenge against Israel, as CBS News has learned a Taiwanese company, Gold Apollo, authorized the use of its branding on the pagers bought by Hezbollah through a Budapest-based company called Back Consulting KFT, based in this residence. But the Hungarian government told us Back Consulting is only a trading intermediary with no manufacturing site, which means where the pagers were made remains an open question. So too is Israel's role in all of this.
And Israel's defense minister has said a, quote, new phase of the war is underway, with the focus now on its northern front with Hezbollah. As CBS News has learned, the Israeli military has moved its 98th division to a position in the north just today. Nora.
Imtiaz Tayeb, thank you very much. For more, let's bring in Face the Nation moderator and CBS News Chief Foreign Affairs correspondent Margaret Brennan. I know, Margaret, you've been working the phone, talking with sources. So how much did the U.S. know about how this operation was carried out?
Well, Nora, my sources told me that the U.S. was given a brief heads up about 20 minutes before yesterday's attack against Hezbollah militants, but just the idea was something was about to happen. The covert operation was not shared in detail in advance. But we do know that the U.S. is assessing at this point war is not inevitable. The Biden administration is still trying to broker both a ceasefire in Gaza and a deal between Hezbollah and Lebanon, Hezbollah in Lebanon and Israel.
It's good to have you here, too, because there's some breaking news that is just coming in, and that is about Iran regarding their efforts to try and undermine the U.S. election. What do we know about what Iran is doing?
Well, Nora, U.S. intelligence just disclosed that this summer, there was a hacking campaign by Iranian actors where they stole information from the Trump campaign and sent it to members of the Biden campaign. This is similar to that hack and leak operation we saw in August, where information was stolen that was damaging to the Trump campaign and given to journalists. In both cases, we don't have evidence the damaging information was used. But this is a loud warning by the intelligence community that as we get closer to the presidential election, we will see more actions by foreign actors to influence the outcome.
There is a lot of foreign influence in these elections. We will be on guard and watching it and reporting on it. Margaret Brennan, thank you so much. Former President Donald Trump is holding a campaign rally tonight on New York's Long Island, with his Secret Service security now essentially equal to that of a sitting president, following two apparent attempts on his life. We get details now from CBS's Nicole Killian. She is at the event with Trump tonight.
Former President Donald Trump back in deep blue New York tonight, with a new level of security following Sunday's arrest of a man after a second apparent assassination attempt, this time at his Florida golf course. At a stop in Manhattan, he was asked if he'll keep golfing.
You don't want to ever be curtailed because of, the crazy people out there, the bad people, crazy people, whatever you want to call them. So we'll let the Secret Service determine that.
There was heavy security presence outside the site of tonight's rally on Long Island. Local law enforcement patrolled crowds on horseback and with canine units.
No concerns about safety. Listen, we're all here. We're all here to support our guy.
A lot of friends and family were spooked, but I'm a diehard. I think he's done good for the country, and I want to be here to support him.
According to the Secret Service, the former president is now receiving the highest level of protection offered by the agency, essentially the same level as a sitting president. That includes counter-assault, drone, sniper, and surveillance teams. Congressional investigators were briefed today by the Secret Service as some lawmakers worry about a potential copycat attack.
I think every American should recognize that our election should be decided by votes at a ballot box, not by an assassin's bullet.
In Washington, Vice President Kamala Harris courted the Latino vote and warned of massive deportations if Trump returns to office, even as a new poll showed more than half of Americans surveyed support Trump's plan.
They have pledged to carry out the largest deportation, a mass deportation, in American history. Imagine what that would look like and what that would be.
Harris and Trump are also vying for a coveted labor endorsement from the Teamsters. But for the first time in nearly 30 years, the union says it isn't backing either presidential candidate because they weren't able to make serious commitments to the group. Nora?
Nicole Killian at the Trump rally tonight. Thank you, Nicole. There's breaking news now from New York City, where rapper Sean Diddy Combs was again denied bail this evening and ordered to remain in jail until his trial on federal sex trafficking and racketeering charges. Combs has pleaded not guilty. CBS's Jerika Duncan reports.
Sean Diddy Combs listened as the judge ordered him to remain behind bars pending his trial, which could take at least a year. His family was visibly upset as they left the courthouse.
Do you realistically see him spending most of the time behind bars before trial?
It's very much of a possibility at this point.
Combs is facing up to life in prison on multiple charges that include sex trafficking and racketeering. The 54-year-old offered to post $50 million bond, give up his cell phone and internet access, and restricting female visitors to family or mothers of his children had he been released. The multi-million-dollar Grammy winner will be housed at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York, an overcrowded facility that has been described as disgusting and inhumane. Prosecutors argued Combs is a serial abuser who threatened and coerced women into performing sexual acts at events Combs planned, which he called freak-offs. CBS News legal analyst Ricky Kleeman.
Why do you think Combs might be treated differently at this detention center than other detainees?
This detention center cannot afford the reality or the publicity of something bad happening to him.
And tonight we learned new information about that 2016 attack in that hotel captured on surveillance video between Combs and his ex-girlfriend. Federal prosecutors released text messages between the two after the incident where his ex-girlfriend says, quote, "I have a black eye and a fat lip, crazy bruising." Combs goes on to say, "Call me. Cops are here. I got 6 kids. You gonna abandon me all alone?" Nora, this is just a taste of what we're going to hear at trial.
Jerika Duncan with that new information. Thank you, Jerika. New crash tests have uncovered an alarming safety concern on America's highways, and it involves electric vehicles. That's coming up next. New research is shining a light on an unexpected danger on our highways. And CBS's Chris Van Cleve reports it may get worse as more Americans switch to electric vehicles.
New crash tests indicate the safety infrastructure lining the nation's roads may not be strong enough to handle impacts from some electric vehicles, which tend to be heavier than their gas-powered counterparts. Here, tearing through the guardrail, or essentially lifting a similar barrier and passing below it.
Unfortunately, these guardrail systems, which have performed very well with gasoline vehicles historically, do not appear to be containing electric vehicles when impacting with similar types of conditions.
In July, the University of Nebraska rammed this 7,000-pound electric pickup into concrete barriers commonly used as freeway medians at 62 miles an hour. The truck weighs 2,000 pounds more than a gas-powered pickup. The barriers contained the collision, but chunks of concrete went flying, and some of the 5,000-pound barriers were pushed back 10 feet, 50% more than normal.
We're trying to create awareness so that there can be more research done.
Nebraska Senator Deb Fischer watched the test live.
Did you expect to see what you saw?
It was eye-opening. There was a lot of damage. If there would have been vehicles on the other side of that barrier, we would have seen a severe accident.
More than 19,000 people died in crashes where their vehicle left the roadway last year. That's nearly half of all traffic deaths. This is how a guardrail is supposed to work, redirecting a vehicle back towards the road. But watch what happens when an electric sedan hits a standard guardrail. During new testing from the Texas Transportation Institute, the guardrail fails as the sedan rips through. In March, Senator Fischer asked NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy about the issue.
Our guardrails, crash attenuators, they are rated up to 5,000 pounds. Many of these vehicles go up to 10,000 pounds. So that has an impact on safety.
A potential impact, hitting the roads in ever-growing numbers. Chris Van Cleve, CBS News, Washington.
Eye on America is next with the push to reshape neighborhoods to meet the demand for more homes. Why some are saying yes in my backyard. The Fed's interest rate cut is sure to spell relief for prospective homeowners, but those looking to buy can't get into a house that doesn't exist. Experts say as many as 6 million new homes are needed to meet the demand. In tonight's Eye on America, Usher Qureshi introduces us to a growing movement to add housing by changing the way we think of traditional neighborhoods.
So this is my favorite one. I might have to put this one upstairs in my office.
For the first time in her 67 years, Rebecca Hemmons is settling into a home she owns.
So that was always a dream and a goal for me.
A dream and a goal that wasn't very easy to achieve.
Not at all.
Though it's not exactly how she imagined it.
Once I had this dream about living in a single-family home and sitting on my porch with my table of lemonade and glasses for the neighbors to wave at.
She couldn't afford a single-family home near Minneapolis, but multi-family housing made her dream of homeownership possible.
Looking for housing is a tedious journey.
How big of a problem is affordable housing in the Twin Cities?
It's a huge problem, and it's getting worse and worse year over year. Just as an example, the past 5 years, I think our median housing price has increased by $100,000, which is a huge increase.
Realtor Paige Kale is part of a growing nationwide coalition of pro-housing advocates who think more building density can solve the problem. It's called the YIMBY movement, short for Yes in My Backyard. It pushes for an end to single-family zoning, making way for more multiple-unit buildings to create more affordable housing.
So if you have 4 units on a single-family site, as opposed to 1 unit, you're able to, spread out the land costs and the infrastructure costs to 4 different housing units.
Minneapolis passed a plan to do that by 2040, but environmentalists and some homeowners oppose the changes.
The 2040 plan will hurt the uniqueness, the character, and the architectural heritage and charm of many single-family home neighborhoods.
It's controversial.
There were a lot of people in community that had strong feelings about it, for sure.
Aline Chermaroff is with the Minneapolis Federal Reserve.
Of course, the real question is, will it work?
Well, it's yet to be known.
Over the next 10 years, she'll track the plan's economic impact.
This is not going to happen overnight.
Correct. Even if you drive down the street, you can see a lot of cranes, and I think from that standpoint, I would say that that's positive, that there's a number of new units coming online every year.
Minnesota lawmakers have been considering taking the rezoning reform statewide. Other places that have also implemented YIMBY policies include California, Oregon, Massachusetts, and Montana.
None of the single-family homes that I looked for matched my budget, for one, and for two, there were too many things that needed to be done that I would have to come up with more to get it looking the way that I wanted it to.
Advocates say rezoning could help more Americans like Hemmons find affordable options.
This is the first. I'm the first person in my family to be a homeowner. First time.
That's quite an accomplishment.
It is.
Homeownership redefined and neighborhoods reshaped. For Eye on America, I'm Usher Qureshi in Minneapolis.
It's a high honor for the so-called hidden figures who helped the U.S. first reach the moon. That story and these amazing women next.
Eye on America is sponsored by Prudential, protecting retirement and your life's work. Who's your rock?
Finally, tonight's Heart of America. It was a special day here in Washington as the women who contributed to NASA's success in the space race were recognized with the Congressional Gold Medal. That's the highest civilian honor bestowed by Congress. That includes the 4 Black women who became known as the Hidden Figures: Katherine Johnson, Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, and aerospace engineer Christine Darden, the lone surviving member who watched from home. Their story inspired a best-selling book and an Oscar-nominated film. It is an honor long overdue. They are tonight's Heart of America. Gives me the goosebumps. And that's tonight's CBS Evening News. I'm Norah O'Donnell. We'll see you right back here tomorrow. Good night.